Why are mental blocks a thing?
So our topic is mental blocks, mostly concerning athletes, but we're not limiting it to them. We chose to do mental blocks because most athletes and regular people will end up hitting a mental block within their athletic career. And we want to be able to show people that even with mental blocks, athletes and normal people can get over them with the help of their family, friends, teachers, coaches, anyone that they surround themselves with. And we thought that this was extremely important because everyone in this group is either an athlete or someone that struggles with mental health issues. And we all have had to face our fair share of difficulties trying to get over things that we just really don't want to and we're really afraid to.
At some point in people's lives, they're going to struggle with certain events. Mental blocks keeps them from doing what scares them and keeps them from moving forward. Golf, cheer, pole vault, and gymnastics are the most common sports when it comes to mental blocks.
In April, we did 2 interviews, one with Katie Carpenter and one with Steve Graff. Our first interview was with Katie Carpenter, the head coach and team director at Buckeye Gymnastics. During this interview, we learned that there are many different coaching styles on how to deal with a mental block. And each kid is different, so they all can't be the same. And just deal with mental blocks on how they were taught to deal with mental blocks when they had their own experiences. If they were a gymnast before and they had a mental block, they deal with mental blocks the same way that the coaches dealt with theirs. So each mental block should be handled differently, and each kid should be treated with and care that they need to get over their mental block. Kitty elaborated on that by explaining that she learned this from coaches she's met and coaches she's worked with that have all had different viewpoints. Kitty explained that coaches from Russia or Romania are typically more tough on gymnasts when they have a mental block. Kitty also explained that coaches who have kids in the sport that they struggle with tend to be more understanding and caring with the athlete that has the mental block. Overall, we learned a lot from Kitty, and it was really eye-opening to know that some coaches do take the time and do care about the athletes that struggle with mental blocks.
Our next interview is with Dr. Steve Graff, a licensed sports psychologist from Mindurance, his own company. He believed the best way to overcome a mental block was to go back to what may have caused the trauma, because he believed that they mostly stemmed from trauma, and the best way to do it is to go back and look at what you did wrong and really figure out the best way to get over it and to essentially go back to the basics. Another way we can overcome mental blocks is to have support from our family, friends, and teammates and know that this is an issue, but I can overcome it and there are ways to overcome it, and just really have confidence in yourself and train your brain to believe that you can overcome it.
And then we also decided to draw from a book called The Leadership Warrior, and it's Coach's Edition, so it kind of just walks coaches through how to be, better coaches and just how to lead athletes in general, just, helping to coach them through mental blocks and the difficulties that they're facing throughout their athletic career. It's important to focus on our brains and strengthen it, because at some point we are going to be hitting low points where we feel like we can't do anything. We're going to hit these mental blocks where we feel like there's no getting over them. Sometimes there are just things that athletes and other people have to address, especially their fears. The more that we train our muscles and our brain and the more they sync together, the more muscle memory we're creating to make sure that our body will be able to perform well in whatever we're doing, no matter what the occasion is. And that also leads me to my point about repetition. Like I said earlier, the more repeatedly you think about something, the more it becomes a reality to you. In an experiment that was performed by Jürgen Beckman of the Institute of Sports Psychology at University of München, he found that usually when athletes are under pressure, they don't perform well, and that's because they haven't trained their brain enough to withstand that pressure they're receiving from crowds, from family, from everyone around them. They just haven't reached that point where they can be truly successful and proud of what they're doing. They tend to then just start focusing, dead focus on their movements rather than their motor skills that they've developed through years of training and practice. We found that the people that we surround ourselves with are incredibly important because they create such a huge impact on our lives. Dr. Murphy, who is a professor at Western Connecticut State University, had an interview with the American Psychological Association. He said that usually it's incredibly hard to stay well balanced under the crazy amounts of pressure that athletes are under, but it can usually be achieved when you have the help of a large support network.
Our analysis showed that mental blocks are a common problem and are not as addressed as often as they should be in sports. We found that gymnasts are very good at hiding the fact that they have a mental block, but they will ask for help if the problem gets to a certain point. When we went to the gym, we had asked a group of gymnasts if they had ever struggled with a mental block, and most of them raised their hands. Then we had asked if they'd ever told their coaches, and only 1 or 2 of them raised their hands. We asked why, and they responded that they were scared to get yelled at or their coaches wouldn't believe them. This information added to the point that mental blocks are not a well-known problem, but they should be.
Our action audience are athletes, coaches, and anyone interested in sports psychology, and it's an athlete-dominant issue. We gave coaches and athletes information on what mental blocks are and any ways that we can help their situations.
Welcome to Buckeye Gymnastics!
For our action step, we took a video of us showing the drills and the steps it would take for a younger gymnast to learn how to overcome a mental block on a back handspring or a back walkover on the beam.
We started with Carly to do a back walkover. We had her lay on the floor and do a bridge kickover, and then we had her do the actual back walkover over a barrel, and then we had her get spotted and do the back walkover on the floor. Then she did it by herself. Then we had her move that up to the highway beam, which is 8 inches wide versus the standard 4 inches wide of a normal beam. And then we had her go to the low beam, do the back walkover with the beam pad, then without the beam pad, and then she went to the high beam and did the back walkover with the beam pad again, and then without it. And those are just the steps it would take to get it back. Then we had Addie demonstrate the steps it would take to get a back handspring. We just had her go straight to the barrel and do the back handspring over the barrel. Then we had her go to the highway beam again, then the low beam with the beam pad, the low beam without the beam pad, the high beam with the beam pad, and then the high beam without the beam pad. Normally there would be spotting in between, but we're not qualified to spot her, and she already knows how to do it. We're just using her as an example of steps to get over a mental block. Kitty actually said that she struggles with mental blocks on back handsprings and beam series, even though she's very good at hiding it because her form is very good. So we actually had her progress past the back handspring to do her beam series, which is a back handspring, and then we had her do her upgraded beam series, which is a back handspring layout step out.
We felt like this was appropriate because mental blocks are very common in the sport of gymnastics, and by doing this we also get a first-hand experience of how to help a younger athlete overcome a mental block on a skill.